tonight by a favorite of our entire crew here, Dungeon Master Dave of Guild Superior. Always humble and talented.
Oh, thank you. Jeez.
And yeah, I have Robert here.
Awesome.
Robert's here too.
Yeah, you know.
Yay, Robert.
Someone's got to pick up your slack.
No, it's true. You do.
Good to have a Robert around, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's my foil. No, he's more than a foil. Hello, Amanda. Hello, Pat. Thanks, everyone, for joining in. Music still sounds loud in my ears. Does that sound okay to you guys, or?
It's a little loud.
It's a little loud. Yeah, I don't know. It's like every one of my views is different. I got to figure this out.
I don't know. I've come to the conclusion that my headphones might be a little too good at picking things up, because there are times when people are like, I don't hear anything. I'm like, you can't.
I know the same thing happens to me. Like, I'm like, what? You can't hear this? Lando, hello. I adjusted. Did this sound better, Dave?
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right, good. This is it's a hot track here, so it should calm down a minute.
Saying no sound.
What? No, she's messing with me. Really? All right, hang on. I'll figure it out.
That dragon is so cool.
Oh. All right, Linda says he hears us.
What?
That's weird.
I have changed nothing. Everything is responding. Everyone else, are you guys hearing us? Hello?
All right.
You can hear too. I think it's Amanda thing. Okay, you scared me, because I know Amanda would never tease me like Josh, but the bleakness can hear. You guys hear us, right?
Uh-oh.
Okay, you're fine. Okay, yeah, okay. Sorry, Amanda. It's something on your end. Whew, scared me. All right, let's go live. Here we go. 3, 2, and 1. You are not only heard, but you are seen. Welcome, ye mad chatters. We are joined tonight by DM Dave, the DM Dave of Guild Superior, and of course, as always, he who is wrong. Robert, welcome. He looks around. Sorry, go ahead.
Good to see you.
No, he who is my good friend and fantastic mod, and always welcome here, my co-host on Loremaster's Arcanum. This is number 96 for LMA. Crazy. We are honing in on 100. I'm sorry, that music is just, I'm not liking it. Let me kill this for a second. Robert, talk about how amazing I am while I fix this music.
Well, I mean, other than your utter lack of knowledge of anti-paladins and, what it means to be antithesis, and well, that's a story for.
Oh, I am so ready for this conversation.
We will get back to that element later.
What did I walk into here, you guys? Am I here to referee this thing? What's going on here?
Oh yeah, that's every LMA. Yes, you must referee. I'm sorry, I didn't tell you that, Dave.
Oh, I'm gonna have to separate you two.
Dave, I literally pulled off the highway to type in chat that he was wrong. Okay? In the middle of a 900-mile drive.
That's
he pulled over.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, he pulled over. All right. So anyway, welcome everyone. Poor Dave. Yes, you are not prepared for this. That is well said. Welcome all the mad chatters. Oh, hang on. Let me pull this up so I can see the chat on my phone as well. We're going to be talking about your favorite magic items tonight, and we have many of them to discuss. I have a few that I've picked out, but before I jump into that, I want Dave to talk about what's going on Guild Superior, Heroes of Greyhawk, other things he has. Dave, go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your streams, please.
Well, thank you. First, I really appreciate the invitation to be on. You guys are great. I love the show, and it's just a trip being here, because I'm watching from the other side. But this is great. So my name's Dave. I run games, produce games, and play games over on Guild Superior. Appreciate having you guys raiding into us and just growing the community, and it's just a fantastic experience. We have a Greyhawk game on Tuesdays, of course, which you're aware of, where we have been going for about 2 years. We're into a new storyline with our Heroes of Greyhawk story, which is starting out in Hamlet, which most of you know about that.
Where's that? Is that in that's in Dragonlance, right?
Oh boy. There's a little place. There's a little world called Greyhawk, John. Let's get serious. No, we've got that game going on. Really excited. We're just kind of getting into planting seeds of the moat house and the banditry and outlawry, and the players are absolutely 100% suspicious of.
Hold on. What?
A growing cadre of game masters and content creators. We've got a Blade Runner game that is a rule set and setting developed by Free League Publishing, which has been really, really fun, gritty, and dark. A little bit more TV MA in terms of content.
Sure.
And then we're doing some play testing work for some new content for 5th edition's Dungeons and Dragons. And Bleak Season, who's in the chat here, has also brought his home game, his home world of Shadesong to our Thursday night. So we've got a lot going on. And then, my heart is in the Greyhawk world, which has been really fun to connect with all of you guys and just brainstorm, and it's been wonderful.
Well, and we're going to jump into the magic items, but you've intrigued me. Tell us more about Bleak Season's world.
Oh man, I mean, you should have him on at some time to talk about it. It's dark and it's gritty, and there's it was something that I'm trying my best here, Bleak. It's something that was created, during the early days of the pandemic, and evolved into a story about dealing with supernatural pandemics, in a sense, and what that means. It's a living world, which is really cool. So all of the people who play in the game are having massive impacts on the storyline of how the world is shifting beneath that storyline and above it and on all sides. So it's been really fun to watch. We've had, I don't know how many players we've had play, but there's been probably at least 16 different players that have been playing in it. And it's broken into small arcs, so it's a really nice way to tell a broader story with smaller, almost he calls them sagas. So that's been really fun to bring that to the channel and see that grow. It had been something that Bleak had been doing prior to joining the guild, and we're just really honored to have him telling those stories with his groups on our channel.
Very nice. Thank you, Amanda. Bleak Season, yes, you will be on if you're welcome. If you want to, we'd love to have you on. It sounds like a really fun world and game. So let's jump into it tonight, shall we? Talking magic items. Now, I'm going to kick us off tonight. Robert, you can guess. Can you guess, Robert?
Well, I mean, given our conversations, if it doesn't start off with the Holy Avenger, I don't know what we're doing here.
You know what? There is something good to being predictable. So the Holy Avenger is always a fan favorite as a magic item, and we're going to be talking about additions as we go through this tonight. But the Holy Avenger in 3.5. So a lot of what I have here will be Pathfinder 3.5 or AD&D DF. PSRD, I guess it's called. And what I love about this weapon is it bonds, it carries sentience. Yes, I have that one over there. Thank you. Rob will be providing the physical copies as I'm running through the digital stuff here. Spell resistance, dispel magic, the bonuses, and I always like my weapons with them when they're Holy Avenger to be sentient. So, Rob, let's go to you. Talk to us about the Holy Avengers.
I mean, being that Paladin is my favorite class, every Paladin wants a Holy Avenger. That's the kind of thing for a Paladin you can literally center a campaign around.
Exactly.
And, I mean, obviously the payoff has to come before, somewhere in the middle of it, but otherwise, just the start of it, you can have an entire section of a campaign just in trying to obtain it, find it, rumors of it, whatever, because I keep them rare. I mean, I always have. It's not something every Paladin gets, but it's the ultimate Paladin weapon. Really, honestly, for me, there's only other one weapon I can think of that is
Save it.
Class specific.
Save it. Oh, class specific. Okay. What was that?
Yeah. The Staff of the Magi.
Yeah. That's pretty class specific.
Yeah.
No, I like that.
Those are the two. There might be others that I'm not thinking of, but those are the two. Maybe the iconic, the two iconic class weapons.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I'm sure there are more, but that's a great point. So back to the Holy Avenger. To me, the reason this is one of my favorites, if not my favorite of all time, is that, as you said, Robert, you can not just begin a campaign with this, but many times. When I talk about my favorite magic items, they go back to when I was young, and what sparked my imagination. And when I created Paladin, he was first level, but he imagined the day that he wielded a Holy Avenger. Dave, thoughts?
I mean, I have never, the Holy Avenger has not made it into one of my games before. I'm scared.
Good on you. That's good. Yeah, it should be super rare.
Yeah, the idea of sentient weapons that was something that as a youngster I gravitated towards very early on. Like the idea that you have this, I don't want to say like partner, but I guess in a way it's a partner. It's someone. It's something that gives you purpose in a sense. It could even unlock some lore for you and answer questions or plant seeds. And it's such a great way to plant hooks for adventures. I've had one significant sentient sword in a game in our Beyond Saltmarsh game, and it was great for planting seeds of where to go next, or the possibilities of where to go. I like the idea of sentient weapons. I think it's cool.
Yeah, so I had sentient weapons as a
approach to it.
Sorry. So I had sentient weapons, a whole separate conversation I wanted to have tonight. And when I started preparing my notes, I thought, again, this is not a one shot. This is like 3, 4, 5 sessions we need to have to talk about your favorite magic items. But Robert, you were saying?
No, I was going to say, I see Dave takes the kind approach to having a sentient weapon. because the big thing about sentient weapons, especially in first edition, was the fact that they could pretty much consume the personality of the character. They could basically take over the character if the person was not strong enough of will or whatever the case may be. And I don't normally go that far because that just leads to problems. But I go the route of the weapon has a mind of its own, and it has no problem letting you know that it has a mind of its own. So I try to make sure they all have very, very distinct personalities.
All right, so sentient weapons, if we have time, let's come back to that. Now we've all agreed the Holy Avenger is the best weapon, period. Spell resistance, the bonusing, you cannot get, it is, well, it's for a paladin, so ergo, it is the best.
Yeah, and it's changed, and it's definitely changed over the years, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, Rob, maybe to begin our edition discussion, and I've got something on the Vorpal Blade, which will kind of walk through the differences in editions, but what have you noticed on the Holy Avenger through the editions?
Well, I mean, I just kind of glanced at 1E to 5E, and I didn't get a chance to figure out exactly where it drastically changed. I know that the Castles and Crusades version is closer to the 1E than it is to the 5E by far.
Sure. I think that's universally true for CNC. It's going to be closer to 1E, 2E, 3. It's not going to be close to 5E in most cases.
But like in for 1E, if you're any character other than a paladin, they can wield it, but it just becomes a straight up +2 sword.
Right.
I mean,
yes.
A paladin's hands, it becomes a +5 sword. Creates a magic resistance of 50% in a 5-foot radius. Dispels magic in a 5-foot radius at the level of magic use equal to the experience level of the paladin, and inflicts 10 points of plus 10 hit points of bonus damage upon chaotic evil opponents.
So it has various mechanic changes over the edition.
Yes.
But does that reflect anything in how you would utilize it in your game? Like in terms of how it might affect the game, or are those just mechanical differences, I guess is my question for you.
Well, I mean, in some ways, like, because it's still a great weapon for a paladin in 5e, but it has a very different feel to it. Mostly because with 5e, they kind of get away from the whole alignment thing to start with.
All right,
So,
my ears are starting to bleed, Robert. I was hoping we would not go here. This is like the one thing I hate the most about 5e, and I did not want to make this an edition fight. So let's back up. Like, what's good about a 5e Holy Avenger?
I can't think of anything.
There's so much good. I've got 5e weapons. I've got 5e stuff up here. But when it comes to paladins and... Sorry, go ahead, Robert.
Advantage on saving throws, and the aura is actually out to 30 feet. Oh, wait, actually, hold on a second. 10 feet, and if you're level 17, it increases to 30. So that's not...
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice.
Not nothing. And straight up, if you hit a fiend or undead with it, extra 2d10 radiant damage. So they changed the focus of it. It's basically fiends and undead as opposed to chaotic evil.
Exactly. No, that well said. All right, so we're going to move on here. We don't want to spend the whole night on this weapon, but we had a question from Bloodwild. Steve asked, why does say the creator must be good? What about the anti-paladin unholy avenger? Exactly. He would be evil. Also would be lawful, but he would be evil and creating the unholy avenger.
Here's the problem. And here is where I win.
Okay, all right. Let's hear where Rob wins.
Because are you going to tell me that a paladin's holy avenger is not going to be as effective against an anti-paladin? No, sir. Because the paladin in the paladin's holy avenger is against chaotic evil.
Yeah, you're going back to 1E. Right. And yes, I would say it would not be as effective. I would say the anti-paladin and the paladin would have both strength against one another and also weaknesses against one another. So you have not won that argument, my friend. But let's say Dave is like, what the heck have I gotten myself into here?
Yeah.
I think there's something in the air down there. I'm not sure what's going on here.
No doubt. All right, so let's skip to the Vorpal Blade, and this will be the last one I'll kind of force feed, because the Unholy Reaver, yes, exactly, Tim. The Vorpal weapon is fun to look at because this article shows it through the editions, and let me pull it up here. So... Vorpal swords in D&D by edition. So it was a +2 blade originally. And Rob, look at this. Can you see this on your screen? On a roll of 18 to 20, this was pre-1E, so this is basic edition, sort of the before first edition AD&D. It was a +2 blade and a roll of 18 to 20, or any roll 10% greater than needed to hit the blade, severs the neck of an opponent. I mean, that was... essentially changing the game.
And they're instant dead, right? As long as, unless they have a second head.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah. Presumably this makes the equivalent of a holy sword. If they had multiple heads, a Hydra, Tiamat, that would be different. But yes, anything that had one head was instantly dead. 18 to 20, or even if it was 10% greater than needed. That's crazy. Cool artwork. Then when you get to first edition, it's a +3 blade for hit and damage. And when you score a hit, if it's high enough, it will sever the neck of the opponent as follows. Normal or unarmored opponent at a roll of 20 to 23. 21 to 23 for larger than man size. Solid or metal stone opponent, 20 to 22 to 23. It would sever the neck. In second edition, the wording changed a bit, but it was essentially the same. In third edition, the Vorpal effect was merely one possible enchantment of a magic weapon that might be determined randomly. And then in 3.5, the wielder, this is the version I used, has to hit a natural 20 for the next severing of the blade. So we'll get to later editions, but sort of from that, basic edition through 3.5. Dave, thoughts on the Vorpal blade? How you play it in your games?
Well, it seems like at some point, was it second edition, where you had to roll a second time to see if the head was severed?
No, you didn't start seeing confirmations until 3.5 and beyond. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if it's a critical hit with the blade, the effect plays out, and I like that approach. A magical weapon +3 on attack and damage. I like that. And yeah, if it's a critical hit, you can say goodbye to your head.
All right.
I mean, what's better than that?
One interesting thing to note that, and I don't remember. I unfortunately didn't grab my 2E book, but I don't know if you remember, but there was a kind of only slightly lesser sword to the Vorpal Blade, the Sword of Sharpness.
Yes, that would sever limbs. Yeah, right.
I think it would also, actually, hold on a second. I think it might also sever heads. But the thing was, instead of +3 full on, it was +3 for intent purposes of who can be hit. So if it required a +3 blade to hit you, it could hit you. But in reality, mechanics-wise, it was only +1.
Right.
But I think it had more or less the same mechanics once you got those modified rolls.
All right, so we have people in the chat, including the Nefarious J, trying to egg us into an edition war. I should have known this would happen when I wanted to talk about magic items. You're like, which edition? Let's try to put the edition wars aside. Let's enjoy the elements of each edition as we talk about our favorite magic items. Rob, go ahead and continue, please.
Sword Sharpness. Choose a +3 weapon or better for purpose of who can or what can be hit by it, even though it only gets a +1 bonus to hit and damage. A very high to hit roll is shown below. It will sever it will sever an extremity.
Right.
Arm, leg, neck, tail, tentacle, whatever. And it actually says whatever.
Don't put that in front of Vivi and Josh. That'll go sideways. So the Vorpal Blade, then, the confirmation mechanic is a whole other topic, and I don't want to get into that tonight because I will get very strident about that. I think just the ability to roll a nat 20 and sever someone's neck, that's a 5% chance on every single roll that you could sever someone's neck. So a peasant wielding a Vorpal Blade could walk up to a 15th level paladin, and he has a 5% chance of severing his head with a roll. That's where I don't like that kind of mechanic. I said I wouldn't talk about it, and I did. So I've got to give Dave and Rob the chance to respond. Go ahead, guys.
I mean, you make a strong point.
I'm just laughing because she uses crit tables, which
Yeah, but you have to hit, you have to confirm, you have to roll percentile dice. So like to get like into the hundreds on that crit table, it's like goes to like a 1 in 2,000, 1 in 3,000, 1 in 4,000 chance. That's different than a 5% chance to sever someone. That's my whole point about balance. I didn't want to do it, and we're doing it anyway. All right, guys, go ahead. Any final thoughts on this before we move on?
What's balance?
Balance is creating something as close to a playable reality without nerfing. He's taking it off. Oh, I can't take this off. I have nothing on it.
I'm in a hot seat listening to you guys.
All right. Yes, exactly. The chat is all. I can't read it all, but I'm sure they're all agreeing with me. The Vorpal Blade then in 5e goes to. Let me pull this back up.
Yeah, it's a nat 20, and the head's off.
But if they have legendary actions, they can be totally immune. So I think 5e actually does that's better than just saying you have a 5% chance of lopping someone's head off no matter what. So if you have a strong, you have that paladin at 15th level, he's got a legendary action, you're not going to sever his head with a 5% chance on every strike, right? Is that right? Am I reading that right, Dave?
I think you are reading it right. As long as they, they're immune to slashing. If they don't need their head, legendary actions,
Yeah.
That it ignores resistance to slashing in 5e though.
What's that?
It does.
Immunity probably still takes hold, but resistance doesn't apply.
Right, exactly. There's immunity and there's resistance. So I believe Tim mentioned this in our Discord. I like this, the historical origins of the Vorpal Blade. The idea of the Vorpal Sword did not begin with Dungeons & Dragons. Its origins go back much further. In 1871, Lewis Carroll wrote the book Through the Looking Glass, in which Alice finds and reads a poem. The poem, called The Jabberwocky, reads as follows. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the maxim foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. That was what Tim put in our Discord today. This is the true nature of a vorpal blade. However you play it, whatever edition, it is a wicked weapon that you can put in, and just make sure you're prepared for it as a DM. Rob, Dave, any final thoughts on this blade before we move on to our next item?
I want one.
In the chat, I'm reading here. I'm probably missing so much. Thank you, everyone. Dun, 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 dun. Put them in. Yes. Poor DMD. Being ignored.
Cute.
No, he's not being ignored. What? All right, Dave, tell us your next magic item favorite.
Well, when you had initially asked me about like iconic items, and of course I was thinking Vorpal Sword, and I'm thinking the Deck of Many Things, and I'm thinking of these, fancy, sort of like these things that people talk about. But then I was like, I really enjoy magic items where there's some additional chaos involved.
Yes.
Like when there is, for example, a table that you can roll on to get whatever the effect is.
I love those.
Isn't always the same. I really like that. So like the bag of beans jumped out at me.
Wait,
I think
this guy? This guy, the bag of beans, it is so cool. I love this. I love this magic item. Well done in 5e as well. So Dave, tell me what you like about this and how you play it in your games.
Well, so actually the bag of tricks has shown up in my games a lot. The bag of beans has not shown up in a game that I play, but I really like it because of the fact that you roll dice to figure out what the effect is, and I always like having that chaos as a dungeon master. I like the uncertainty of what the effect is going to be. It kind of keeps
I do too.
Myself and the table on their toes a little bit because you just don't know what's going to happen. I think the Deck of Many Things is similar. I'm totally afraid of the Deck of Many Things because of that. But and I've heard horror stories about it, and maybe you guys have used it in your games. But
I have, yes.
I mean, I love how you can have an angry bullet shows up with one of the beans, or you have toadstools that sprout, but even the toadstools that sprout could potentially have beneficial or detrimental effects if you eat them. There's just all these little nuances that can be really fun, and then those set up additional like mini encounters for the party. Do they eat the toadstools? Do they research the toadstools? Do they go to find a druid who can help them identify them? There's just so many seeds, quote unquote, right, for further adventure, and I really like that.
No, I could not agree more. I loved it when you put that in. I've got that. I've got your bag of tricks as well up here, very similar, Deck of Many Things. All of these randomizing magic items, they're fun, they're dangerous for the players, and they create great story options for the DM. So how about on the bag of beans, a pyramid with a 60-foot square base bursts upward with a sarcophagus inside containing a mummy lord. The pyramids, I mean, like, just these like totally random things, and you suddenly have a great theater of mind game to play with the bag of beans. Very fun.
Now, and I also look at these types of magic items as suggested outcomes. So create your own as a DM. What would be fun for your table, or other scenarios that you might want to throw in there as options. I mean, you can add to this table. This table is not set in stone. They're beans. Add another bean.
I could not say it better. I could not say that better. Dave, that is absolutely correct. I think maybe you should just be on every week instead of Rob. You seem to be speaking so much more sensible.
I can only take off so many sweatshirts. It's too hot.
Rob, I want to talk more broadly about the philosophical points of implementing magic in a game, how you balance as a DM. But I do want you to comment on things like these random variable magic items, Deck of Many Things, bag of beans. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to tell you, the 5e version of the bag of beans is a lot more fun.
I think so too.
I think it's actually more fun than the 1e version, because the 1e version, if I was a player and I had forgotten how bad it was, I would never touch a bean as a player in any bag.
Give us the 1e beans. I don't have that up on my screen here. Give that to us.
Okay, there are 7. Well, first of all, when it's open, an examiner will reveal the pebble-like objects If they're dumped out of the bag, they will each explode for 5 to 20 hit points of damage each. All creatures with a 10-foot radius must save versus magic or take full damage.
That includes the party in that one, right?
Everyone.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're too bad for the party.
Now for the beans, they give seven different examples. They go from each in succession will spring some creature or object. It's suggested that 3 to 12 beans are optimum, and only 1 or 2 will be beneficial. So this is the examples that they give. Number 1, 3 shriekers spring up and begin wailing. An ice storm hits the area. A poisonous raspberry bush with animated runners shoots up, but each of its 5 to 20 berries is a gem. It's one of the few good ones. Why is it poisonous? I don't know. If the gems are, is a gem worth 100 to 500 gold pieces. Number 4, a hole opens in the ground and either a purple worm can be below, or they give a purple worm or a Djinnin ring.
Oh, yes.
Love that.
Number 5, smoke and grass cover an area of 50 feet radius for 5 turns. Each creature therein cannot see and will be blinded for 1 to 6 rounds, even when they step out of the cloud. Number 6, a wyvern grows instantly and attacks. Its sting is a javelin of piercing. Number 7, poison gas seeps out slowly, forming a 20-foot radius cloud which persists for 1 turn. While it lasts, it might turn some dirt at center to magic dust. But seriously, it's like
I would leave the bag closed.
Examples.
If I could metagame, I would leave the bag closed. Yes.
I got one for you though. In a different version that I'm not going to mention which version it is that we've been talking about earlier. 1d4 plus 8 bright pink toads crawl forth. Whenever a toad is touched, it transforms into a large or smaller monster of the GM's choice. I mean, that opens up a lot of monsters. I don't know. That sounds fun.
All right. So, Dave, what have you done with your players in relation to these sorts of you've talked about how you can modify, what you can add. Can you give us an example from one of your games, what you've done with this?
One thing that jumps into mind as you ask that is with the bag of tricks, which is similar, although typically the bag of tricks, these are beneficial effects that happen.
Right.
You take a fuzzy ball out, you throw it down, and it's a baboon or a mastiff or whatever it is. But we utilize that bag of tricks in our Beyond Saltmarsh game to a pretty interesting storyline with our with one of our characters who had this item, and it became sort of a conscience sort of reminder where they were pulling these creatures out and setting them free into the world only to die. Over and over again, they were throwing these fuzzy balls out, and the monster or the animal, would fight alongside of them, but then die and that was it. And then they'd pull another, and so it became like this. It was weighing heavily on them, and so they were able to seek out the help of a druid to try to figure out how to put an end to this bag of tricks. So it actually became a magic item that at first was like really fun and cool, and then it sort of had this arc of its own where it became kind of like a sadness for the character, who then sought out a way to remedy that. So it went from being, and this was something that was developed through myself along with the player, that we would kind of play with that idea. And I thought it worked brilliantly. It was really a fun arc for the character to see them become go from sort of this chaos goblin type of character to someone who was a little bit more attuned to the impact of their action.
Like a minor curse.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, Dave froze.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. He's back. He froze briefly, but not in a bad pose. Every time I freeze on Zoom, it's horrible. I love that, Dave. That's a really good way to relay that. Before we move on to our next item, give us another example of any sort of randomized weapon, or the sentient weapon came up. Let me give you this one instead. Amanda put this in the chat. So when you run sentient weapons, do they have souls which are trapped in them, or is the sentience part of the forging of the weapon?
Whoa. Great question. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know we were going that deep. All right. Well, so in one of my games, it was a warlock who thought he was a paladin, And he had come across a sentient weapon that was wielded in the hands of the Lord Protectors, and had been a weapon that had been used to fight Death Knights. And so this weapon, I don't know if we ever went deep enough to find out if it had a soul, but I played it like it did. I certainly played it like it had a soul, and it had it sort of was able to calculate the responsibility that it had to the history from which it came. So whether that was a soul or that was something that was forged into it, I guess I don't really know ultimately, but to me it felt like it was a soul for this sword. And the sword was definitely, I would say, on the lawful good side of things, and really felt like there was a duty to uphold, to go back. And actually we used it as a MacGuffin to bring that character back into a battle with Kargoth, at the point where Kargoth was accepting the Death Knight gift. I don't know if you call it that, whatever. But it was kind of a cool tool to shift time. But yeah, I think they have souls. I think so. Some of them, not all of them.
I love that. So I think to me that makes a lot of sense, and it's more the question is the power, not the answer, right? As a DM, just making you think about how you implement a sentient weapon. That's a really good way to look at it. Rob, your thoughts on that?
So I actually had in my last the 5e campaign that I had that wrapped up. I actually had created one of the players kind of accidentally crafted a sentient weapon. It was the story was it started off with them going and retrieving a sacred anvil, an anvil that was a treasure that was sacred to the dwarves, and because the one of the players was playing a forged cleric wanted to go craft a weapon. I was like, okay, I had them do some rolls and rolled a 20 on one of the rolls. I didn't tell them what they needed. They just told me that they had rolled a 20, and it ended up basically stealing some of the energy from one of the other characters, at which point the character was a sorcerer who just happened to be walking by, just happened to have entered the room at the time, kind of stole energy, and next thing you know, the sword was sentient, and it didn't have any history to it, so all it knew was what it was learning. And probably the most interesting part of that entire thing was the person who crafted the weapon was crafting it for somebody else. So the person who crafted the weapon didn't even get to use it because they were crafting it for one of the other players.
Wow.
Which became a whole entire story into itself.
I love that.
So was the sorcerer lost into the sword then? Like their
no, it was just kind of big effects, swirling of magics about, and it was basically I waited to see how long it took for the sorcerer to save, to see how much energy the weapon took from it, and how basically figure out how powerful the weapon was going to be. So, but the sorcerer was fine, just a little drained for a bit.
Merely a scratch. Very good. All right. So, Dave, as our guest, you had another item, the immovable rod, you referenced, and I'll pull that up here. The immovable rod is a super fun item. Tell us your thoughts and how you've used that in your game.
Well, again, thinking about what are some of these iconic items that you can introduce into your game that people almost associate with Dungeons and Dragons. And so this was one of those that came to mind right away, and folks in our Discord were really excited about the possibilities. And I was looking online about all the ideas that people have had, and I've seen it used as anchors for ships or for people falling. Mm-hmm. It saved people's lives on multiple occasions in games. When I was playing in college, I had a thief who had one and used it to climb surfaces, to make their way through windows that they couldn't reach. But there's so many other interesting ways. Actually, the reason I threw that on there, to be honest with you, John, is because I was curious to know some of the creative ways that you guys have used it.
I was hoping you were going to say that.
It's almost like there's unlimited ways this thing could be used.
Yeah. So I'm. Let me pull this up here. And sorry, this is everything else I have in dark mode, but this particular thing I couldn't put in reader. So the immovable rod. This is 3.5, or the open gaming setup. This rod looks like a flat iron bar with a small button at one end. When the button is pushed, move action, the rod does not move from where it is. Even if staying in place, it defies gravity. And thus, the owner can lift it to a place with the rod wherever he wishes, push the button, and let it go. So, like, as a grappling hook, do you have, like, that's a whole mechanism piece of it. Several immovable rods can even make a ladder when used together. Immovable rod can support up to 8,000 pounds before falling to the ground. If a creature pushes against an immovable rod, it must succeed a DC 30 strength check. So this is sort of the 3.5 Pathfinder version of it. Rob, what else are you finding in our addition check?
Actually, I got to figure out where they have it in here, because it wasn't under rods, and I'm wondering, did this actually end up in Arcanum, or? I
mean, it's something I feel like I've. The rod of cancellation, the immovable rod, those seem like they've been in my.
Cancellation is here. That I have. I've got.
Is the immovable rod? Well, it's at least 3.5 because that's Open Gaming Edition.
Well, it's definitely that old. But let's check UA.
While we're waiting, anyone in the chat, have you used it? It is in 1E, according to, so Lando would know.
Yeah, I'm certain it is.
I thought it was too.
Actually, it might be under generic as opposed to under rods.
Great tool to be used when you have been swallowed by a monster. Well said. Mm-hmm. It's under miscellaneous magic items. Thank you, Jeff. Hey, Jeff, I love your suggestion, by the way, on the Rod of Swill, and I do want to get you on a future episode of this where we talk about our favorite magic items specific to the world of Greyhawk. I think that will be a fun LMA for sure.
All right, listen to this.
So you're swallowed. Let's say you're swallowed by a Tarrasque. You activate the immovable rod. The Tarrasque is thrashing about, and it just tears right through the Tarrasque.
Exactly. Exactly.
Beautiful.
That's the whole point of when you're swallowed.
You basically put Thor's hammer down.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
I feel like that's another one of those magic items that will really stretch your chops as a dungeon master and as a player that has it, because you'll be proposing ideas on how it could be used, and you're going to come up with things that it's an unpredictable item, right? Its use is unpredictable, and I think that kind of ties back to the idea of these items that have variability to them. They don't just do one thing. And I think that's interesting.
No, I agree. And what I find, Dave, is in most cases with a creative player, there are almost no magic items which are only useful for one thing. It really relies on the player. At some point, there was one player who was the first one to think of casting grease and throwing fire at it, right? I mean, that's like the most basic example. But Anaho was thrown up in our chat. Eddie, thank you. Super creative spellcasters, users of magic, will find ways to make fun things that were not expected by the creator of the magic item. So you've talked about that several times, Dave. Like, where have you seen your players, not you as a DM, but where your players have challenged? Because I can give a couple examples. I'll give you one while you're thinking. The aforementioned Anaho used shrink, took a barrel of oil, tossed it down a gullet, and then had it expand and explode inside. Like he has done those sorts of creative combinations of magic. I'm sure you've seen things like that in your game.
I have. I'm on the spot here. I'm trying to think of something.
Take your time. So I'm gonna look at the chat while you're. So, Naho did need one. It must be blind. Just flip through 1E, 2E, DMG. Oh yeah, that's so. Lando, can you give us where it's at? Because no one else is finding it in 1E. I thought it was in 1E as well. Manda, you like homebrew items. I agree with that. We could have a whole episode on homebrew items. Yep, LMA on its own. While you're thinking, you might notice we have a new follower goal. We wanted to get to 2,000. We've shot past that. We're at 2,024, so we're setting the next one at 2,250, and I think we can get there by the end of the year. So that's our follower goal in the upper right-hand corner. So if you've not followed tonight, please give us a follow. We would appreciate that, and thank you for all the support from the Mad Chatters. I've stalled as long as I can, Dave. What do you got?
Yeah, my brain is racing. The one thing that I keep thinking about is the someone casting fog cloud, but having it inside of a vessel. I think it was inside of like a jar or something, that they were then in a tight situation and smashed it on the ground because they were a non-magic user.
Nice.
Kind of handed that. It's like taking that magic and giving it to someone who's not a magic user to then implement, which I think is kind of a fun way to do it.
I like that. Yeah, great example. Thank you, Dave. Rob, did you find it?
I'm not entirely sure that it's actually 1A.
Well, I mean, you got to fight Lando. I mean, I have never found Lando to be wrong, but he can defend his honor. All right. What other items, Rob, did you want to talk about while you're still hunting?
Well, I mean, there's not a heck of a lot of discussion about it, but I mean, probably the most iconic, almost ubiquitous item that you've seen pretty much so many campaigns has got to be the bag of holding. I mean, especially in the 1E, 2E, especially if you're somebody who's going to be a stickler for encumbrance.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
Do you guys usually have that magic item available at some point in the early stages of a new story?
Great question.
To have that storage unit sort of thing?
I love that question. I've got an answer, but let me let Rob answer first.
If I know that they're going to be doing a lot of dungeon crawling, I'm probably going to let them only because I have yet to find a group that is willing to do the whole laying siege to the dungeon thing. I mean, right. I understand. Even back then, nobody had the patience for it. They got sooner or later they would get bored with it. They wanted to be looking at something else. Is basically the problem. So it's like, I'm okay with giving them a bag of holding, especially in the newer edition where they're with the weight limit and such, where they can't take everything, but they can do a lot more, and they can be get a lot more out of it. Without having to do this whole, we're taking a trip back to town, going back, taking a trip back to town.
I get a sense that the bag of holding is. I get the sense that the bag of holding is kind of one of those things that's almost like an expectation of the table that it'll be there. I've heard
really
even when we're starting.
Interesting.
Kind of, yeah, even like when we're like talking about the early ideas of starting a new game, it's like, well, then when we have the bag of holding, we'll be it's like, oh, when. Okay.
Wow. I've never, Dave, that's super interesting. Yeah. So my answer was going to be bag of holdings are, I would consider them semi-rare in my games. I will hand them out when appropriate in certain situations, maybe at 4th to 9th level, just depending. I mean, it's possible someone could come across one at 1st level, but they are not a default thing in my games. I look at them as a sort of mid-level weapon. It's like a +2/+3 blade or a +2/+3 shield. That's sort of the economy that I apply to something like a bag of holding, because it has so many uses beyond carrying. So that was in the chat. Goblin of Gygaxmore, if I said that correctly. Portable holes, bag of holdings, alternate uses. Let's talk about that. And we'll start with you, Dave. You're nodding vigorously.
Oh, I mean, just being able to hide things that other people are looking for, being able to potentially hide people that people are looking for.
How long do they live? They have air for...
Is it 5?
It's 5 to 10 minutes, depending on edition, I think. But yes, it's.
And then is it divided by the number of creatures or something like that?
Exactly. Yes, because they're consuming. Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, there's those are some easy ones. It's like subterfuge is classic with those. So yeah, I agree. They're not just a storage unit.
But what about the planar sort of interaction between them?
That part I've never dealt into that. I know a little bit about it, but it's never come up in my games.
Let me go to Rob. Rob,
about the fact that putting one into the other.
I got a portable hole and I drop it into my bag of holding. Rob, tell me what happens.
Oh my goodness, I don't remember what the exact effect is. All I know is things go boom.
Yeah, I always think of it as like a thermonuclear detonation,
Yeah.
but I think wild magic tables are appropriate as well. Like whatever you as a DM want to do, but it should be potentially devastating.
Mind you, the players, it's kind of, there comes a point where you have to decide whether the players should know that, or need to know that, or have some way of the characters knowing that. Not so much the portable hole into the bag of holding or vice versa, but what happens if they walk into, Mordenkainen's magnificent mansion?
Right.
Which is extra dimensional.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
That's a good point.
It's like that. There's like, all right, well, do we go to the letter of the law?
Well, I would feel like the bag of holding of the portable hole, they go to a certain dimension, but they are contained within a different dimension already. So you could take one from the ethereal plane, the material plane, and as long as you're not returning to the plane of that item, it behaves normally. And the whole idea of introducing two different planar objects directly into one another is different than carrying that item into a different plane. At least that's always how I've looked at it. I'm not gonna like draw that hard, but yes, it could be.
It's definitely a judgment call because again, it's one of those things where you could walk into the magnificent mansion. Oh, I don't know. Say you're running. What's the one that the compendium of things that they released? They had like 12 adventures with 13
the
adventures.
Yawning Portal or something?
No, not the Yawning Portal. And it's driving me crazy because I ran an adventure from it. And
wait, is this
Tony Winslow Brill, who's been on Jay's stream, wrote one of the adventures.
Okay, Jay's in the chat. He'll probably mention. So, and yes, so typically what you have seen happen, and I've played it this way as well, when you combine those two items, you have this interaction between them, and there's a rift in the planes. And that rift can be manifested in whatever way the DM wants. I think there's some really fun things you could do with that. Could be things pouring out, things pouring in, could be explosion, but whatever you want to do with that, that's a fun thing.
I like the idea of it opening a rift and sucking things into a different space, and then boom, the whole campaign has just gone to on a different tangent.
Exactly. Yeah. Love that.
Planet of Tarrasques.
That is the one most notorious creature I have never put in front of one of my campaigns.
Ooh, yeah,
I've never played a Tarrasque in a game.
I did, without my knowledge. It happened to me in a fundraiser stream. It was a one-shot.
Great way to raise funds. Yeah, love that, Dave.
people could donate money to trigger creatures. And there was one called Release the Tarrasque that was like, a couple $100 donation. And someone did it in my game. And it sprang forth. And it was a really, really fun moment. The table was super into it. And it ate all but one player. And it did end up being a TPK. But it was really fun. It was great.
What TPK isn't fun?
I mean, it was wonderful, and the players, like I said, they leaned into it, and that's what you need. A good table will lean into that stuff, and yeah.
If anyone wondered why I wanted Dave on my channel today, it was for exactly this philosophy. Like, what TPK is not fun? Thank you, Dave. We have a question from the chat. This was from Pat66. Artifacts allowed in your game? I have Vecna, Crystal of Ebon, Flame, etc. And that was really where I wanted to go with this. Is how do you balance magic items in your game? There are so many more I want to talk about. We will do this again. We'll get, I have still many more that I had prepped here, many pictures. I want to talk about scrolls. They're great for balancing the game. Expendable charge items like I have in Grey Ark Awakening Book 2, where Rasmus has a staff, but it's got a limited number of or Ring of Ram. Limited number of charges. That's a great way for a DM to give a party something which is kind of OP for their level, but then is minimized as it goes and then will eventually vanish. That's a really fun mechanic. What kinds of things do you like to do in your games, Rob, to balance the mechanics of the magic item but still make it where the players feel the power of what they have?
Depending on what the weapon is, you have to make sure you have those story beats where there's moments for that weapon to shine.
Exactly.
Even if it's, occasionally you have to have that thing that just is susceptible to it, and you accept the fact that, this thing's going to go down a lot faster than it should because the weapon's there. But the whole point, if you're going to give them the weapon, you can't suddenly decide to have everything that doesn't work with the weapon, because that's just being cruel.
Right. Exactly.
It's figuring out how much to have it work with the weapon versus not. Because the other problem that you have is if you have the one player with the special weapon, then suddenly
Everyone else
the
feels
players are
left
just
out.
standing around. And, well, all right, we'll just stay. We'll just wait for you to finish up. Yep.
Right. One thing that I played around with recently is the idea of a weapon that is potentially an artifact. And I think artifacts are welcome. It's just how do you use them.
Mm-hmm.
But a weapon or an item that grows in power with the character's growth, but that there are moments where the character can glimpse the possibilities of that item, but then it grows with them. So it's not always going to be, of an artifact level power. It's like this nascent sort of development of that power, and I think that's kind of a fun idea to play with.
I love that, Dave. So yes, that nascent power inside the. So even last night, you probably haven't had time. I watch other streams as much as I can, but when you're a streamer all week long and also have a family and a full-time job, you can't watch everyone else's streams. I get that. But last night on Greyhawk Awakening, Rizia chose. She had two choices. Mm-hmm. She chose the golden axe. That golden axe has a certain level of power. It's also sentient, which comes to some of our conversation tonight. But then it has these 3 slots, and it can grow in power not just as she levels up, but as she acquires the additional items which go into this item, which in effect is an artifact, but it doesn't begin as an artifact. I love that concept. It's something I've used in my games a lot.
And that item has history in her family's lineage, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that was a cool story and cool item for sure. Yeah, I like that. The growth of the item with the growth and the adventures and the successes of the characters is really fun.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't bring that up so you could say it was a cool item on my part. I was saying I would.
I thought it was cool though. I like that.
Thank you.
I like where you can kind of like almost socket in different elements into an item to allow it to go in different directions. I think that's really a cool idea.
Thank you. And I think also leveling up with the character, so you could do things which are tied to the life force. So if it is a soul trapped in a sentient weapon, perhaps as the character's life force grows, it just innately grows, or is it a sort of a mechanic that has to be tied to the weapon? Those are all fun. Rob, your thoughts?
So for me, artifact, weapons aside, because weapons, I think it tends to be a very, very different thing. Because they're meant to be used, but I look at a lot of artifacts, and this probably goes back to the whole 1E where artifacts were a very, very dangerous thing to have. A lot of them were just straight up dangerous to the characters to begin with, even if they were meant to be a good thing. I look at those as items that are more the objective and something that they're looking to do and put something to center story around, but I don't want the characters to have that item full time. It'll be something of the nature where it's truly a one of a kind thing. Weapons they can be unique, but even then there's like different. You see different types of powers in different weapons. Maybe there's no exact same thing, but they're similar at least. I'm looking at artifacts as something that truly unique. Usually they have a long history to them. And whether it's because the thing itself is dangerous, or just being in possession of it is dangerous because
you're a
people
target.
know that you have it.
Yeah.
You're a target.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I like to use that as a story in and of itself, getting it to the right hands so that you don't become a target.
I love that. I have several thoughts, but Dave, you first.
Yeah, I agree. I think the DM can give it, then the DM can take it away. If using those artifacts as that narrative MacGuffin to inspire.
I'm sorry, you've said that twice tonight, and I'm clueless. What is MacGuffin?
It's just like a plot device, right? It's
okay.
Kind of like a plot device to.
Is that a 5e thing, or am I just missing?
I don't know. It's just I think it's a.
I've never heard it. I've missed it.
That's in general English thing.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much. I'm pretty proud of my general English, but apparently I've missed one.
Trying to be nice.
MacGuffin. So what does it mean? What's a MacGuffin?
It's just, the way I understand it, and I'm no expert, but it's an item or a device that allows you to plant. It's a hook. It's a plot hook, basically. It's just a fancy way of saying.
And the origin is from. What's the etymology? Like, so I'll look this up later. Sorry, guys. Now you've got me. How on earth have I missed it?
John, you want an example of a MacGuffin?
Yes. Well, no, I don't want an example. Well, yes, I'll take it, but I want to know why it's called a MacGuffin.
The one ring to rule them all.
Yeah, okay,
right,
but where does that come? Where does the name MacGuffin come from?
All right, here it is. I'm on Wikipedia, and everybody knows that Wikipedia is always right.
Always right.
This term was originated by Angus MacPhail for film, adopted by Alfred Hitchcock, wonderful filmmaker, later extended to similar device and other fiction. So it's a device, event, object that's necessary to the plot to give motivation.
That makes perfect sense. The fact that Bloodwild Steve also did not know what it was, and reading I consider myself fairly literate. I had never heard that term. I've learned. Thank you, Dave. You have taught me, well, more than one thing, but you have certainly taught me that tonight.
My job is done here.
I didn't mean to sweat you out tonight. I do want to conclude tonight with, hold on. We got another question. The mysterious item is the focus. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Mike, thank you. It's the plot motivation. It's an item or an event which moves the plot forward, creates the impetus for the protagonist. All right, got that. Cursed items. Last topic tonight before we raid Jay. I think this really goes back to what Rob was saying a moment ago. You can have the perfect example of an item which is super powerful. We didn't get to the Cloak of Invisibility. I had the Cloak of Billowing. I want to talk about scrolls, potions. There are so many fun topics for us to go into later. But this idea of magic items having a counterbalance, the One Ring makes you invisible. Super cool, also corrupts you over time. The most nefarious example of this is going to cursed items. So, Dave, what cursed items have you used in your game?
Oh gosh, I have created cursed items for my game, and usually I like to use books because I can do things with books that are, again, variable to the story. All of a sudden there's a page that wasn't there before that has something in it, or all of a sudden you have a compulsion to do something. I've used that a couple of different times, and it's been pretty successful, and it's always, again, using it as a plot device for me. Whether that is, hey, we need to get this curse lifted, we need to go find, these ingredients for some sort of a restoration spell, or we need to go find this sage who can help us, lift the curse. Always thinking about how does it further the plot for me is important. But I like books. I've used books quite a bit for cursed items.
So I like books as well. In fact, we didn't talk about tomes. I think tomes, the Tome of Might, Tome of Intellect, these are great things to add into games. They become less important in later editions where people, the PCs can get increases as they level up, and their attributes become more malleable as they grow. The more static those are, if I've got a 16 intelligence and I've had that to level 7, and then I find a Tome of Intellect and I raise that to 17, that is hugely impactful to me as a PC. So I love that use of tomes in that direction as well. But back to this idea of the cursed items, Rob, how have you used them?
It's funny. I don't remember the last time I used a straight-on cursed item. There is an item that I had come up, but it's not so much a flat-out curse as, it depends on whether or not the player is aware of it. Black Razor in White Plume Mountain. This is a weapon that drains life energy from things that it damages. Here's the problem. The sword has a hunger. And if you stop feeding the sword is going to try to take you over. Now, whether that's a flat-out curse, I don't know. But I kind of go with it kind of plays upon a player because the player is not going to want to give up that sword. But they run into this issue of trying to figure out, well, okay, how long can we get away with this before the sword just takes over and you're done?
No, well, I'm sorry. That was a great answer, Rob. I was looking at the chat. So I popped in the chat, like, your items that were cursed. Of course, Steve, fantastic. The cod piece. The cod piece of leprosy, that is fantastic. Stormbringer, well done, landed. The gauntlet of dexterity, fumbling, love that one. The robe of flaying, yes, instantly flayed. Let's see here. You made the Baska's hair fall out with the chainmail. Oh, so you did have a cursed item, Rob.
That wasn't a curse. That was hysterical.
It sounds like a curse to me.
They found they found a suit of chainmail. The party found a suit of chainmail, and I don't even remember why the wizard thought that maybe the chainmail would be something that they could wear and still let them cast, but they decided to put it on. It had a very slight magical aura about it when it did detect magic, and it turns out that the armor itself wasn't magical. It was the magical powder that the inside of the armor had been contaminated with, that removed all hair from the person over a course of time. So we had a wizard wandering around with no hair. The wizard was very proud of his hair before.
That's super fun.
That's
also feels
tailor-made.
it still feels like semantics. It sounded like it was cursed. It was just cursed by the powder inside of it. No,
I like items that the PC has a compulsion to not release from their possession. That they just have this desire to keep it, and that right there, even if you're like homebrewing a cursed item, for example, just do start there, because everybody else in the party is going to be highly suspicious of what's going on. And oftentimes I've found that with those types of items, the party will give me some of the best ideas for what the item actually turns out to be.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. And we need to get a DM's roundtable here together with a few folks from the community, because like all of these ideas for how to DM your games, many times your players give you better ideas than you have. So you can pen something down and you think and then they say something and you go, oh, yeah, that's exactly what it does. But
the secret is not to have your eyes light up when they do that and just...
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Precisely. Yeah. That's what it does. So I did this this is one of my cursed items here as we get ready to close. It was to my 7-year-old son. He had, his first character was Sledge, the dwarf. His last name was, Rob?
Hammer.
Exactly. And Sledgehammer. Dave has talked often tonight about using the magic item as a plot driver. I agree with that. I also use the magic item as a cautionary note for the overly eager and handsy player. And so, what did I call it? It was the Ring of Necrotic Sewage, something like that. He found a gold ring. As soon as he put it on his finger, like he didn't check it, didn't do anything. He was 7 years old. I'm sorry, I've traumatized my son. He still likes D&D though. And he put that ring on. Immediately a malodorous scent blossomed from his finger, so much so that the rest of his party had to move away from him. As the hours went on, the finger started to turn black, and it became clear to him he would have to sever the finger, or eventually it would grow up the hand. And so he had to sever the finger to get that ring off of his hand before this rot went up the rest of his arm. And it taught my young player to be cautious about what he drives into with a magic item.
That is some tough love right there. Wow.
I'm sorry. Should I have said that? Do I have CPS on my door now? What have I missed in the chat, Rob? Did you see anything else? The Ring of Hiding, limited invisibility, causes all hair to fall off the body. Love that. Yes. Trust me, you know what I'm doing. Yeah, exactly.
A sentient sword that drinks too much.
My Friday night players,
I like that.
They, especially after the whole powder, chainmail, hairless wizard incident, it's very, very rare that any of them is taking a chance on anything before they've identified it. They will wait. They will wait for the next day so the wizard can replenish their identify spell before they're putting anything on.
That's a lesson that you have to instill, I think, early on. Absolutely. Cutting your finger off, though.
Well, I didn't cut it off. He chose to cut it off. He could have chosen not to.
It was a choice.
It was a choice. I'm going to put up a poll here as I'm prepping this. Dave, talk to us again about your streams. I want all, now that we have the full crew here before we raid into Jay in moments, talk to us about what's coming up for you on Guild Superior, Heroes of Greyhawk, and all the good stuff you're doing.
Yep, so our Heroes of Greyhawk stream is on Tuesday nights, and we are running the Temple of Elemental Evil. We're starting out in Hamlet, of course, which is absolutely fantastic. Just a wonderful place to start a campaign. It's been really fun, and my players are extremely suspicious of everybody and everything, which is great. Right where I want them to be. So we've got that going on Tuesdays. On Thursdays, we have a ongoing game called Shade Song, which again I spoke a little bit about, is being run by my pal the Bleak Season, who's here in the chat, and that is a very cool living world game that just sort of adapts to player decisions, and it's just these really neat sort of short arc sagas that all lead into this greater narrative. And then on Sundays, we've got a Blade Runner game going on that's dark and gritty and a little TV MA, I would say, in terms of rating, a little bit different than what our normal fare is. And then on Monday nights, we do this thing called Monday Night Mayhem, which is essentially giving folks an opportunity to play games from our community, whether it's they've never streamed and they want to stream, they've never run a game on a stream before. We're basically encouraging people to come in, work with us. We have folks who help to set up all the behind the scenes stuff, from the promoting the game to running the production side of things with the running the OBS and the Twitch and all that stuff and music. You don't have to worry about it. Just come on in and tell a story and have fun. And so that's been really rewarding, because we've had a lot of people join our community and get involved in games and get inspired to do stuff online, which is really fun. So
and look, I don't say this lightly, Dave, because I pop into a lot of streams. I only support and really kind of pump those, I think, which are great. And I've watched yours. They're well done. The DMing is good. The players are good. The production quality is strong. So if you haven't followed Dave, please give Guild Superior a follow. We really like what they're doing over there. So you have a poll up. Should we have another of these magic item LMAs? Your options are duh, yawn, only if Tim's on, or only if Rob sings. So please vote in the chat. And as we get ready, Rob, your final thoughts.
I mean, there's so many web magical items that are just really, really interesting. It's one of those things where every once in a while, especially back then, I used to dive in just to see what the magic items were, to figure out, all right, what do I want to do with this? And, do I just want to put it somewhere in an adventure? I also had to be, every once in a while I would run one of the modules, and you never knew what was going to pop in some of those. So you had to be prepared for what was about to happen to you if you did run this adventure.
Yeah.
But you can base an entire adventure, mini campaign, or a campaign around these things, and just have fun with it. Let your players have some fun with it. Make sure you have some fun yourself with it, and let them use them in unusual ways and see what they come up with.
Yeah, and I think that can be the major topic for our next one. Clearly, I can see where the chat's going. When I put something like Only Rob Sings out, that is sort of my canary in the mine to see if people are not that interested in the topic, because if they're not, they will just bomb that one. Instead, we've got 12 folks so far that have said duh. Only 4 have said only if Rob sings. Now I know
I think you underestimate how many of them just want to hear me sing,
or overestimate. I know who the yawn is. The yawn will always be Pat Draws. Whatever my poll is, the worst option will always be selected by Pat Draws, and that's why I love him. We're going to raid into Lord Gazumba, but I want to conclude tonight by saying thank you so much to my 2 co-hosts tonight. It was so much fun. We barely scratched the surface of this topic. And Dave, go ahead, John. Guess which one is you? I already did, dude. Yeah, and I was right, wasn't I, Pat? Dave, I want to play in one of your games. Invite me to a one-shot. Yes. You sound like my kind of DM. I would love to play in one of your games. Everyone check out Dave's stuff, and we're going to start the raid with Jay. That'll kick off in 10 seconds. Reminder, this Sunday we have Fall of Red Dawn. Kicking off at 4:30, I think I have that right, or 4:40, whatever the time is. It's close to that Central Time, and join Rory and crew for episode 3, I believe, of Fall of Red Dawn, and we'll be back next week with Greyhawk Awakening, and I have one of 2 guests appearing for us on next week's LMA. Either one you will be excited to see. Thank you, Mad Chatters. Thank you for all of you. Final thoughts, anyone?
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Rob. Rating now.